Hey guys, I'm here with Greg. He worked on Dr. Seuss, the Sneetches?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the project? And...
Sure. Yeah, it was a Netflix production. It was a sort of a 50-minute special, animated special based on the original story. We kind of, the writers kind of took their own direction with it, made it about two girls from each side, rather than sort of the more macro view the story takes. And it's really about their relationship and how they overcome the prejudices of their groups through their friendship.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
Cool. And how was it working like on a cartoon, like an animated project?
I've done a lot of cartoons actually. Yeah. I've had about 10 years of experience with Disney doing a lot of their preschool shows, Puppy Dog Pals, Pupstruction, a lot of dog shows. I'm sort of typecast into preschool dog shows.
Okay.
But so I've had a fair amount of experience in animation, but this one was a little bit of a step up just because we had a live orchestra, had a bit more of a cinematic feel, and I had a great time with it.
Yeah. Do you also think that was because like it was a movie versus like an episodic thing?
Yeah, we definitely, yeah. Well, for whatever reason, when something's got a longer form, there is sort of that expectation that it'll take a more orchestral approach sometimes, but it's also just the nature of storytelling when a lot of these preschool shows for Disney are 10-minute chunks.
Yes.
And so the scenes don't really work the same way they do with a movie where you may have a 4 or 5 minute scene between characters and it's just a totally different pace of storytelling. So music functions really different in that longer time period as well.
Tell me about some of the ideas with the music that went into.
Well, it being Dr. Seuss, we were really concerned with it being quirky and unique and unexpected.
Right.
So that was sort of where we started, and we went with some like low-hanging fruit in terms of like goofy percussion sounds like flexitones and vibra slaps and all these different sort of like goofy sounds. But the problem with that was that they ended up sounding very just sort of like sound effects. Right, you put them in there, and they'd play. There's not a lot of expression with that.
Right.
And the Sneetches, though, is a very expressive story. Right, it's at its heart about overcoming prejudice, bigotry, and so we needed, even though we needed that quirk in there, we also needed to have that emotional core as well. So that's where the orchestra comes in. And while we we'd use the orchestra for those moments, we would bring those quirkier sounds in for like just specific moments, like when the Moonbelly machine was introduced, or chose our moments for the quirk basically.
What was your favorite instrument that was worked on?
I worked with an amazing Latin American percussionist, Lorena Perez Batista, and she has all these beautiful little I don't want to call them toys, but they're just different kinds of shakers and wood blocks and just percussion instruments that give you a lot of like little sounds that I can kind of throw around the stereo field. That was another way that we sort of achieved a sense of unexpectedness and subtleness. It was almost like the quirkiness that we could incorporate into conversations because they weren't as loud as a vibra slap, but they still gave you the sense of like bubbling beneath the surface.
Right.
Yeah, I loved working with her in that.
Yeah. Do you like working more with like natural recorded sounds versus doing everything like kind of like in post-production?
Oh yeah. Well, it really just depends on budget. I mean, I do a lot of things myself at home, but when it comes to the orchestral stuff, I need, it can be done with samples, but I love so much working with live orchestras.
Great.
I grew up playing in orchestras, so
awesome.
I mean, for me, it's like the natural home for me. So I was so glad that we were able to do that.
That's all. Yeah. So from childhood, you were like into music. That's okay.
Yeah. I had a really good music school program in my high school.
Did you always want to go into film, or did you?
Yeah,
film TV?
Weirdly, as a kid, I would, watch movies and get crazy goosebumps from the experience and
from like the score.
Yeah, from the movie. But then I realized, if I listen to the music, I can get that same high, right? So I sort of just started listening to soundtracks as a kid, just to have that recreated experience from being in the theater.
Right.
And then eventually, when I got into music myself, I realized I could write it. The first thing I ever scored was a feature-length parody of the Phantom Menace. We were.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, it came out when we were in high school, and we weren't fans of it, so we processed that by doing a parody. And so I got to do a John Williams impression for a while there. And then I was hooked.
Yeah. All right. Who's your biggest influencer?
Oh, there's so many. Musically, I mean, you got to start with John Williams again. Those guys of like the '80s and the '90s, Danny Elfman, Jerry Goldsmith. But then, like as I got older, I got more into composers like John Bryan, who's sort of a cross between a record producer and a composer. Right, he's in the studio, multi-instrumentalist, playing all his own stuff. That was really interesting to me. I definitely tried to adapt part of that into my work as well when I was doing more dramas. But then when I got back into to animation, I was back to the orchestral stuff.
Okay.
So yeah. Otherwise, Bear McCreary. I don't know, a lot of composers that I'm not thinking of at the moment.
All right, now you're good. And then last question: what's your favorite project that you've worked on, and why?
I did a World War II thriller recently called Enemy No More.
Okay.
And I did the same time I was scoring that, I did an independent animation pilot called Talon. And both of those projects were much darker. And much richer in terms of like the emotional landscape. Talon in particular had it's this prehistoric show set in the time of the dinosaurs.
Oh, wow.
Dinosaurs have magical powers essentially.
They have powers. Okay.
Sort of a mix between Avatar: The Last Airbender and
which I love,
Land Before Time.
Okay.
So that I would say that was my favorite project.
All right.
Just because it was drawing on so many of my own influences, and we're a small plug. We're trying to get episode 2 off the ground. So if you're a fan of indie animation, please check out our Kickstarter for Talent.
Okay, all right.
How much I would say that.
No, you're good. Actually, last thing. Any more future projects with Dr. Seuss or anything related to that?
I wish. The Netflix license is expired, so they no longer have access to it.
Licensing.
So we'll see, but I'm certainly going to keep my eye out for any more Dr. Seuss related projects because it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Greg. Well, thank you for your time. Go ahead and check out his projects. Go to his IMDb. Thank you so much for joining us. And this is Clyden from Nerd News Social. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, man.